welcome to Hockey Night Online. I'm Monika Platek. Happy to join you on this midweek show, and there's so much to talk about. We're entering our few last days here of the NHL season, and some more disappointment for Canadian NHL teams last night as both the Leafs and the Sens were officially eliminated from their shot at the playoffs. So we had tons of reaction on Twitter and Facebook about that. Of course, another big announcement yesterday from the Vancouver Canucks as the GM and president Mike Gillis was fired. Not a surprising move. A lot of fans were calling for it. So as you're watching with us right now, we want to know which of those stories do you want us to talk about? And to answer all of those questions, we're going to bring in Glenn Healy of Hockey Night in Canada. Hello, Glenn.
Hello, Monika. I didn't realize Vancouver traded for Trevor Gillies.
Well, we're going to talk about all of that, not so much that, but everything else everyone's talking about because, Glenn, that was the big news yesterday. We're hearing some big rumors again today, though. The Vancouver Canucks are holding a press conference in just a few hours, and I like what I'm hearing in terms of this rumor. Of course, it's Trevor Linden, former Vancouver Canucks captain, a beloved member of that hockey community, apparently may take over as team president. So we'll get to that in just a second, but let's talk about the Mike Gillis firing. And now everybody's looking at John Tortorella, whether or not he's next. And some of the tweets that we had coming in from you, we're gonna look at some of the reaction. This one from Cohiba. I'd give Torts the benefit of the doubt. He inherited a nightmare of an organization. So not really putting the blame so much on him. And this next one though, a bit of a different opinion. Tortorella needs to go too. And I'll have to tell you, Glenn, this is what the majority of the fans are saying. So what do you think? Where is Torts going to go from here? Is he sticking with the team?
Well, I wouldn't consider Vancouver to be a nightmare of an organization. It was just 3 years ago that they were one win away from a Stanley Cup. I think John Tortorella has to go. And here's the reason why. If you had one player underperform, I would say that player needs to pick his game up, or maybe needs to be traded, or maybe it's time to pack it in. But to a man, this Vancouver team has underperformed. You know, I look at the Sedins, Hart Trophy nominees, Hart Trophy winners, Art Ross Trophy winners, and yet they are playing like average third-line players. Edler, the defenseman, who was so good a few years back on All-Star, now, he has looked like he's going to wear the green jacket for the worst plus-minus in the league. How does that happen? Now, when I watched him in the Olympics, he was back to being an all-star again. So the coach has to get the best out of the players, and to a man, he has not done that. And here's two stats that stick out in my mind. Vancouver went a month without a third-period goal from a forward. I don't know how that happens with that talent. Their power play in the third period, 6%, and that's not good enough. And I don't know how with his collection of talent. So someone has to pay the price other than Mike Gillis.
Okay, so he did pay the price, obviously getting canned from the team, and that was right after the Vancouver Canucks were officially eliminated from the playoffs, their first time missing the postseason since 2008. So obviously a huge disappointment for the city of Vancouver. But again, we talked about this rumor, and we can't confirm it. There's going to be this press conference in a few hours with the Canucks. Trevor Linden. And this next tweet refers to that. There's been a lot of hashtags going on, Glenn. I know you're not on Twitter, but you know what a hashtag is. I've seen a lot of hire Linden, a lot of fire Torts, and of course a lot of fire Gillis. But now that the fans got that, they're all about hiring Linden. Do you see that happening?
I do. And, you know, apathy amongst fans is a dangerous thing if you're the owner of that hockey club. And, you know, when you looked at Vancouver and the number of unsold private boxes, and there's quite a few of them, the number of season ticket subscriptions that are not renewing, and there's quite a few of them, empty seats, that is a death knell for an owner. And so you have to change the culture. You've got to change the fans' attitude about the team. That's why the change is made with Mike Gillis. So how do you make it really become a lot better? You get the most popular player, arguably, that's ever played for Vancouver, and Trevor Linden. And that is the flavor of the day. That's what a number of teams have done, whether it's the Tampa Bay Lightning, whether it's the Boston Bruins with Cam Neely, whether it was the Buffalo Sabres who wanted to change their franchise by bringing in a Pat LaFontaine to say, it's okay, we'll get through this. But that's the way National Hockey League teams are operating today, and Vancouver is just another one to add to the mix with Trevor Linden helping out.
Okay, so we'll have to hold tight, and again, that's all the news in the press conference. You'll find it here at cbcsports.ca. So let's talk about.
What's
that?
I'd go after Wayne Gretzky if I was the Vancouver Canucks. And you want to change the fate of your team? Trevor's great. Wayne Gretzky's the greatest.
Yes. I mean, I will not disagree with you there. Gretzky would absolutely be the greatest. But as you mentioned there about the season ticket holders, tonight is actually the deadline for those renewals. So no surprise here that they're going to make this splashy announcement today. And if it is Trevor Linden, he's definitely one of those names that will re-energize this depressed Vancouver Canucks following. So speaking of another depressed fan following, let's talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs. Officially eliminated from their playoff chances last night with that loss. And it has just been a train fallen off the rails here, Glenn Healy, with the Toronto Maple Leafs. So let's look at this next question here from Twitter. Again, they don't know where to turn their blame to, but they're throwing it at Nonis, the GM. They're looking at Dion, saying he's a joke as captain. What is your take on what has gone wrong with the Leafs?
Well, it is so ironic. We just talked about Vancouver, a team that under Mike Gillis's watch had 10 playoff rounds. And here we have the Toronto Maple Leafs in 9 years. They've got one playoff round in 9 years. And it hasn't been pretty. The team, you saw fatal flaws in the team as soon as Dave Bolin went down with an injury November 2nd. You saw a penalty kill that went from almost 90% to the low 80s. You then saw Nazem Kadri have to play one spot up against better players. So the club all year long showed just signs that they gave up too many shots, too many chances, and couldn't withstand some of the injuries that they felt, particularly the Bolin one. He really is the only guy who's won anything of any significance. He knows how to get it done, and he missed 56 games. So once you start to see a team outshot, outplayed, outchanced, once Bernier went down with an injury, there goes their second best player. And Reimer wasn't able to do what Bernier did to hide some of these mistakes that were so glaring through the course of the year. And in 13 days, this club, you're right, the train went right off the rails. So the club needs a huge improvement. You talk about leadership? Yes, they need more leadership. They need some defense, particularly when you start looking at guys like a Tim Gleason, who last night played as a number one shutdown pair. He's a number 5, not a number 2. And so you've got to cover up some of the weaknesses of the team. Otherwise, you'll have the same recipe next year, and it's not a good recipe. The one thing Nonis has, a number of the players contractually are up, and so you can replace those players. You're not stuck with contracts like, say, the Ottawa Senators, who have most of their guys all back, and that will be the, kind of the choir for next year as well. This can't be changed.
Yeah, and those golf jokes started right after last night's game, the Leafs getting ready for their tee times, and here we are again. It's obviously become a theme here in the postseason in Toronto. Okay, so some other fans of teams around the Canadian market are saying, at least you're not an Edmonton Oilers fan, at least you're not a Calgary Flames fan. It could be much worse. And that's where we take our next question, talking about the rebuild that's happening with some of these teams. Ian Berg makes a good point here. He says, as more Canadian NHL teams fail, I ask, is the Flames rebuild further along than the Oilers in really half the time?
No. And here's why I say that they are not as ramped up as the Edmonton Oilers. Let's talk in September, and let's see what this Oilers team looks like after they've made some significant summer trades. Then we'll be able to better assess whether the Edmonton Oilers are further behind the Calgary Flames, as some people like to think. Let's not look at the points in the standings for this season. Let's look at it once we know that the Oilers have recognized their faults, recognized their major weaknesses, and have acted upon them. And if they've acted upon them this summer, then they're going to be a much improved team. And it all starts with defense. I think they're going to get a blue chip defenseman for some of their blue chip young guys up front. And they're also going to add another high pick in the draft. And the top 5 picks in this year's draft are all really good players. So if they get, for instance, an Ekblad as a defenseman, and then they add a defenseman, wow, they're going to start the rebuild in a huge way quickly.
Okay, so I'm over talking about the disappointments. Let's talk about the one Canadian NHL team that will be seeing some postseason action, obviously, the Montreal Canadiens. So the Habs' Max Pacioretty is just on fire lately. He has 9 goals and 6 assists in the last 10 games, obviously playing a key role in that offensive explosion. But let's talk about the East. We're going to take a look at the standings now. And is there anyone here that you think can still sneak into the wild card spot in this closing weekend?
No. It is over. The Elvis has left the building. The clubs that are in are the clubs that are right down on that list in front of you. And congratulations to Detroit. 23 years of making the playoffs. You know, to put that in perspective, and we talked about it on Saturday night, 276 players in the NHL today were not even born the last time the Detroit Red Wings missed the playoffs. This is an incredible run, an incredible streak. And with Columbus making the playoffs, they are now, over the past 9 years, they have catapulted past the Leafs. This will be their second playoff round in 9 years. The Leafs are stuck at 1. But the list is as it sits. And you talked about Pacioretty. Wow. It is that chemistry he has with Vanek and Desharnais that have really taken the Montreal Canadiens to the next level. So good on Bergevin for getting Thomas Vanek, because he's been a wonderful ad, and they've got the right chemistry with that line. Didn't work out with Plekanec on the line with Vanek, but it really works out with Desharnais.
You're right. They really are clicking. So who do you like in the East? And you're talking about the Montreal Canadiens, but do you think they could actually go deep?
Well, you know, it's funny. It changes every day. I looked at Tampa Bay last night at about 5 minutes after 7 and thought, I like Tampa Bay. They're a team that could do some danger. And when Bishop walked off the ice with an injury at about 7:05, I didn't like Tampa Bay so much anymore. So yeah, it can change so fast. But I think a team that's sneaky good and gets along really well and is really starting to roll at the right time is the Montreal Canadiens. They remind me of the New York Islanders team I played with in 1993. A team that really gets along, a team that's having fun. There's no blame game being placed on anybody. They're just rolling, and they feel good about themselves, and that's a dangerous group.
Well, that being said, though, it'll be interesting to see how many just Canadian NHL fans are actually going to rally behind the Montreal Canadiens, because obviously with that huge rivalry with the Leafs, do you see it even happening?
Oh, yeah. We're jump right on board. We're going to cover the Canadiens in the first round, and we're all in. And they're our Canadian hope. So bring it on. Go Habs.
I think so, too, right? Just move it aside. I mean, Carey Price already won you a gold medal. Can't we all be friends? Okay, so let's take a look at the West now, the Wild Wild West. So fun to watch this season, and so many dominant powerhouse teams. So who are you liking out here in the West?
Okay, this is jump ball. And the reason I say it's jump ball, I think first we have to see who finishes first. And they'll get the easiest first round because the wild cards aren't strong in the West. The rest of the West, really strong. And the sad thing is, in that first round, because number 2 plays number 3 in each of the divisions, there is going to be a 110-plus point team that's going to go down in the first round. That is so sad with the way the new matchup is laid out. So round 1, there are going to be 2 major teams that fall, and that is it's going to open things up for the club that gets through the first round into round number 2.
Do you see this playoff format sticking, Glenn? Because a lot of people are not only confused by it, but they're just kind of questioning why the changes even had to happen.
Well, you know, the changes happened because people wanted to see 7 teams try to compete for that last wild card spot. And that's what we've had right down the stretch. Everybody's in at least 7 cities have been glued to the standings because it really matters to them. So it's really added that to the final weeks of the season. That's what they wanted. They wanted the parity, and it's the best way, I guess, to make it fair. Now, we're looking at the West right now and saying, this isn't fair. That's not the way it should be. But everything changes, and next year it could be the East that's in that position. So I don't think there's any perfect way, but for now, this is the way it's going to stay, and I don't think anyone has much of an appetite to change it.
Well, just like you said, it has made that final playoff race a lot more dynamic. Okay, so the playoffs start a week from today. Can you believe it, Glenn?
On the road again. I'd sing it, but I'm a lousy singer. So here we go. And, you know, from a Leaf standpoint, I'm going to miss that last year when they were in the playoffs and that Maple Leaf Square and all the thousands of people that were there to watch their team. I'm going to miss that this year. So we need a Habs Square, so to be, somewhere around Montreal. But it's going to be a fun ride for the next 2 months.
That's right. It is going to be a really fun ride. And remember, Glenn Healy will be bringing you all of the latest from the playoffs along with the rest of our Hockey Night in Canada team. Thank you so much, Glenn, for joining us today to answer all these questions.
Monica, you are way better than Elliott, way better than Oak, way better than Pizzo. Come on board, please. Help us out.
You're a sweetheart. I will say I have better hair than all the guys you just mentioned, but That's about all. Thank you again to Glenn Healy. And remember, keep that conversation going as we enter the final weekend of the regular NHL season. You can reach us on Twitter, on Facebook. I'm Monika Platek. I'll see you next time right here on Hockey Night Online.